Kia ora. Before we start, I might make some opening statements about the situation of a dual citizen having been detained at the Turkish border. As you will have been advised or have seen, someone who has identified themselves as a citizen of New Zealand, accompanied by two small children, has been detained at the Turkish border. To give you some additional information, this is an individual that has been known to both New Zealand and Australian authorities for some time. They are someone who held dual citizenship as Australian and New Zealand. When we were aware of that dual citizenship and the movement of that individual, the fact that they left New Zealand at the age of 6, were resident in Australia from that time, became an Australian citizen, left from Australia to Syria and travelled on Australian passport, we raised our concern with Australia around resolving, if in the eventuality of their detention or potential return, for whom responsibility for those individuals should reside. Our very strong view on behalf of New Zealand and New Zealanders was that this individual was clearly most appropriately dealt with by Australia. That is where their family resides, that is where their links reside, and that is the place from which they departed for Syria. I raised that issue directly with PM Morrison and asked that we work together on resolving the issue. I was then informed in the following year that Australia had unilaterally revoked the citizenship of the individual involved. You can imagine my response. Since that time, we have continually raised with Australia our view that their decision was wrong. We continue to raise that view. My concern, however, now is that we have a situation where someone is now detained with two small children. My focus is on resolving this issue with the best interests of the children in mind, whilst continuing to making very strong representations to Australia about their responsibility here. I will finally add, if the shoe were on the other foot, we would take responsibility. That would be the right thing to do, and I ask of Australia that they do the same. I need only describe the situation to you for you to get a sense of how wrong their decision was. This is clearly an individual whose links sit most closely with Australia. It's there, in our view, that responsibility lies. I think New Zealand, frankly, is tired of having Australia export its problems, but now there are two children involved. And so we have to resolve this issue with the interest of those children in mind.
Have you spoken to Morrison since the
Sorry?
children was detained?
So legally, currently, their only citizenship sits with New Zealand. I'm currently continuing to raise this issue with Australia, and I will continue to do so. But at the same time, I'm very mindful that there are children involved here. We will need to find a resolution to this issue.
Have you spoken to Morrison since?
So at the time that I was told by PM Morrison that they had revoked the citizenship of this individual, I informed him that at the time that this issue were to become public, I would speak very strongly on New Zealand's view. He has been forewarned of that continuously. So this morning I did the same again, reminded him that we would be raising this issue very strongly.
And what was his response?
Yeah, my view in these cases was that bilaterally between New Zealand and Australia, we needed to work these things through. I never believed that the right response was to simply have a race to revoke people's citizenship. That is just not the right thing to do. We will put our hands up when we need to own the situation. We expected the same of Australia. They did not act in good faith.
Did she go to Australia with her parents? Did she go there with her parents?
I'll come to you. No, Barry, that's not. Sorry, what was that? Yeah. Well, of course, with children involved, we are very young children. We are very mindful of that. This won't necessarily be a quick issue to resolve. Someone has been detained in Turkey at a time when we have a global pandemic. We will be looking to find a resolution in a timely way given the involvement of children, though. I can't put a time frame around that. I can't necessarily tell you at this stage what the outcome will be. I am going to ask officials to ensure we have a welfare check on the children given their age.
What were the circumstances?
In Australia continues to ignore your government's representation and your personal representation.
Oh, look, I would probably a question better put to them. Look, this is an important relationship to us. It is. And the fact that we have been able to have these very frank and close exchanges on these issues, I value that. But I cannot hide the feeling I have strongly on behalf of New Zealanders about what's being done here, because it's simply not right.
What were the circumstances of her getting Australian citizenship?
The circumstance, I can't answer that. But
How old was she when
she left here at 6, and so sometime thereafter.
When you say it's 6, she was 6 years old.
6 years old.
So did she go with her parents?
I believe it was a family relocation.
Can you just clarify when it was that it was revoked and how long before you found out? What time period are we talking here?
So I raised. I'll be a little bit careful about the timelines here. I raised quite early on in my time in office the issue of dual citizens and my belief that we needed to work through those cases, given I had a bit of background to suggest there was some that should rightly be dealt with by Australia. It was at a meeting sometime thereafter, I believe the following year, that I was told that decision had been taken, and we have been making representations on the issue ever since.
But does that mean that there are other situations like this?
You'll-
There are other citizens?
You'll remember by past Prime Ministers there's been reference to a very small number of individuals who may hold citizenship in these circumstances. My recollection from memory is that, of course, many in this case do not hold continual links with New Zealand. No, look, to be clear, New Zealand has obligations when it comes to citizens, regardless of their circumstances, regardless of whether they have committed offences, and particularly we have obligations when there are children involved. I would argue Australia holds those obligations too, but what will be guiding a lot of what we do from here is the fact two very, very small children who did not make the choice to be born into a war zone are involved.
How angry are you?
Oh, shoot, I better get into the house. Forgive me.